Which type of traffic inspection uses pattern matching? So in here, it says, so which type of traffic inspection uses pattern matching? So this means that this is an IPS question, we know that. And pattern matching should be signature-based inspection, because it means that if this inspection looks up on a specific pattern, it means that it's about a signature. But let's speak about the other options. So policy-based inspection, this clearly doesn't sound right. How could you policy-based inspect by using pattern matching? Doesn't make sense. Being policy-based by itself is not pattern, it is very specific. Then statistical anomaly detection, this is basically for day zero attacks. So unknown attacks which are not known, so there's no pattern to match those against. Then protocol verification. Protocol verification is used for RFC and sanity checks, not for pattern matching. So there you go. Should be signature-based inspection. And let's say next. Which two deployments options can be used for an inline deployment of a CISCO firepower appliance? So it's important to know that it is a question about inline deployment only. So what are the two options to deploy the firepower inline? It's not about what are the options to deploy firepower. It's about what are the options to deploy firepower in inline mode. I'm insisting on this because I've been there as well. When I read a question fast, and in most cases, most people, if you go in the exam in a rush reading a question, you would read this as which two development options can be used for a deployment of firepower. You're gonna skip, you're gonna oversee the inline keyword, which means you're gonna not be able to provide a proper answer in the end. So let's speak about inline mode and see what are the options. Place the appliance between the router and the switch. Doesn't make sense because the appliance, if it's placed inline, it's placed at layer 2, and between a router and a switch, that's a layer 3 link. So that's not correct, or should not be correct. Configure the span feature. This is not inline. So spanning means promiscuous is not inline. So it means that one should be correct. There are the remaining two, but let's verify that up. So configure the appliance to act as a multi-port switch. Correct. That's inline mode with multiple interfaces. Insert a network tap between a router and a switch to send simplex mirrors of network traffic to the appliance. So that's not this is again not inline. This is promiscuous. So there we go. So insert a network tap between a router and a switch, which means again this is span. So this is span or mirroring, which is promiscuous mode. This is also span. So it actually means that the first option, it is correct, or should be. And again, it's an unfortunate answer from my point of view, because yes, this is achievable if you have the router, in here the router, and then the switch. It is misleading, of course. And you put the appliance, the firepower appliance in between. It is correct because the IP address, the router can have an IP address of 111 on that interface, 111, let's say, and the switch can have an IP address of, let's say, 1112. So because the VLAN endpoints or the layer 3 endpoints of the broadcast domain are on the router and possibly on the switch or on some remote device, then in this case the firepower is deployed in layer 2. But the answer is very misleading because inline mode means layer 2 mode, And then when you read the first option, it looks like it's going to be in layer 3 because you make use of a router. So it's actually a misleading question, but that's the answer. So I'm going to put in here, well, that should be the answer. I'm going to put in here A and C. Let's say submit survey. And there we go. All options, all answers were correct. There's a question from Ivan. Is IPS not corrective though? IDS would be detective. This question seems really ambiguous. I'm surprised. Even what you're seeing here is unfortunately what you should expect in the exam or close to. Now let me get back to that question and explain a bit more. I agree with you, it's misleading, but basically you gotta read the question properly, and you still may have some of the questions which you may not understand completely and provide the correct answers, but that should be one to very few of them. If there are too many of them, then you should raise a attack with not attack. You should raise a case with CISCO's certification team. So Ivan says, isn't IPS corrective though? IDS would be detective. So I suppose everybody agrees that those systems outlined in there, video cameras, CM solutions, and IPS, is not recovery and not deterrent. So let's speak about corrective and detective. Now the CM can both detect an attack or a problem and then correct it. So it can detect an attack, that's the scope of CM, to correlate logs and detect attacks, and then it can correct the attack by signaling, by basically by speaking with other security solutions and asking the other security solutions to basically restrict network access for a specific area of the network because something happened. So technically speaking, CM can be both defective and corrective. Detective and corrective. Then IP cameras, they are primarily detective. They are detective. They detect, motion, but they can also be corrective. Likewise, if you have an intelligence system which can signal, for example, you may have an IP camera system which once, if it's basically, if it detects movement at 3 a.m. in the morning in a specific a specific area of the company's headquarters, for example, then it can actually take action, and it can basically alert somebody, or it can signal to a system that motion was detected in room number whatever, and that system can basically take action and, I don't know, start the alarm, or close the doors or whatever. So it is primarily the IP camera is primarily a detective tool, but it could also be corrective. Likewise, CM is primarily a detective tool, but could also be corrective. And then the IPS, intrusion prevention system. Now, the main difference between IPS and IDS is not in the name of the product. So you may believe that intrusion detection can detect, attacks, and intrusion prevention can prevent. Actually, intrusion prevention is nothing else but the IDS system, but deployed in line. So because it sees in real time the live traffic, it can not only detect, but it can also prevent, right? While an IDS, because it's not in inline mode deployed, is in span mode, can only detect and maybe optionally correct, but only by integrating with other solutions. So IPS being in line is primarily, let me go back. It is going to be primarily a detective tool, and preventive, not corrective. because it's going to detect the attack and it's in its inline configure position is going to prevent the attack from happening. But it can optionally be likewise corrective if deployed with other solutions. So because all of them, IPS, the CM and the IP camera surveillance system are primarily focused on detection, and they can also do correction, but only if they are integrated with other security solutions. It makes sense that the answer is detective and not corrective. So even I hope it makes sense. Because honestly, if you read this question properly and you know how each of those technologies work, this is actually a pretty clear question with pretty clear about what is the correct answer actually. But you just have to give it more thought and don't jump to conclusions that IPS is basically a corrective solution. You have to understand what corrective means and what preventive means. So I hope I answered the question.